Welcome to the Mount Pleasant Podcast, featuring discussions and interviews about the people, places, and events that make Mount Pleasant such a special place.
This is the Mount Pleasant Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Cleary, and all thanks to the great people of Mount Pleasant Magazine, I get the honor and the privilege of introducing you to Mount Pleasant, the people who make it such a special place to do business, to work, and even to live. We're introducing you to Mount Pleasant's best on the Mount Pleasant Podcast. Trooper Bob, that's what everyone refers to him as. Well, maybe not his mom. We'll find out about that. But Bob Beres is a man who is keeping the low country safe, and he is a traffic safety expert. You see him on your TV on ABC News4, and he is our guest today on Mount Pleasant Podcast. Trooper Bob, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Does your mom call you Trooper Bob, or is that just everybody else?
You know, she calls me Robert.
Okay.
That's my
As
name.
A mom should.
But the other day she called me Trooper Bob when I answered the door, and I said, "Mom, I'm your son." That's leave that for everybody else.
Hey, it's great to have an identity that people know you about. They see you on your TV. Let's go into a little bit of a history, though. The story of Bob Beres. Where does this story begin?
Well, it starts in Baden, Austria. My mom and dad escaped from Hungary and ended up in a refugee camp in Baden, Austria. That's where I was born. About a year and a half later, we came over to the United States with $500, and that was it. A short time later, ended up with a church, the Calvary United Church of Christ in Fairfield, Connecticut. We lived in a little 3-room house behind the church for the first 8 years of my life. And then we bought an old house, a very old house that was built in 1914. And we bought this in like 1978. So we fixed up one room at a time, and I lived in there. My sister actually sold it last year, and she's moving down here to be closer to us. And I graduated high school. I was working for a carpenter after high school. I loved carpentry work, and I was working for a carpenter. I went over his house one day, and the wife says, "Well, you know, he took all the tools, took all the money out of the bank. I don't know where he is." I'm standing on the front porch. I'm like, "Oh, wow. You know, I'm 18 years old. What am I going to do? I don't have any tools." So I look across the street, and there's a Navy recruiting office. So I said, "Well, I like the water." So I joined up for the Navy that afternoon in August, and I left in December. And I was stationed down here aboard the USS Mount Baker, AE-34, right here at the weapons station. Served in the Persian Gulf during first Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield. Been all around the world for those 4 years. And after those 4 years, I said, you know, I don't know what I want to do. So I left the Navy with no job. And you know, the length of a Navy pier is about 100 yards long. And I was thinking, what in the world do I want to do? And I felt like God put his hand on my head and said, "Look, I want you to be a policeman." And I applied everywhere, Hanahan, Goose Creek, everywhere you can think of. Everyone wouldn't, they always said no. They said, "No, you have any experience. You're 21 years old. You don't have a law enforcement background." The only agency to hire me was MUSC, their public safety department. But I wasn't even a public safety officer. I was a state security officer. So if you remember back in the day on Spring Street, there was the MUSC helicopter was on Spring Street by the old Hardys. So I sat in this little shack for about $15,000 a year, and I watched the helicopter at a midnight shift from 11 at night, 7 in the morning.
Oh my gosh!
And then I heard over the years that, over the months, that if you went to the Charleston County Sheriff's Office at the jail and worked in the jail for a year, there's a good chance you can get on the road. In between that time, I was driving home to Goose Creek, and I saw on the side of the interstate, it said South Carolina Highway Patrol on Fain Street right there. I saw the building, and I said, "Wow, the Highway Patrol." But I'm thinking I couldn't even get in the mall as a security guard. There's no way the Highway Patrol is going to hire me. Everybody said no. So come to find out, a couple of months later, I did go to the sheriff's office, worked as a detention officer. And in the meantime, I was taking tests for the Highway Patrol. You had to drive to Columbia to take several tests. It took about 6 months to get on. And I finally got a letter, and it says, "Hey, you can start August 14th, 1994. 1994. So I've been... So I joined the Highway Patrol, and I showed up at the academy looking at the stage, and they said, "That's the stage where you graduate from." And I had a pair of running shoes in one hand and a pillow in the other, because that's what they told you to bring. And I said, "I don't care what it takes. This place gave me a job when nobody else will, and this is where my loyalty lies." And I've stayed with them for 25 years. I retired a lieutenant with the Highway Patrol.
It's the true American story right there, Bob. Europe and now to the Low Country. You're well recognized across. You put a lot of time in with the South Carolina Highway Patrol. Let me ask you this, because you've got the law enforcement background. We see across the country now there are some police departments, maybe even locally, where there is a shortage of officers. So if there's a young man, a young woman that's watching our podcast, listening to us today, why should they maybe want to consider police as a career?
It's a calling. Don't do anything for the money. People always say, well, we need more money. You need to pay more. I mean, how much do you need to get paid? It's a dangerous job. Will $100,000 work? What about when you get shot for $100,000? You can't spend $100,000. I applied to the Highway Patrol for $19,000 a year, but I went on because I wanted to. Obviously, they're paying close to $40,000 now to get on the Highway Patrol. You have to want to do it. You have to want to help people. I wanted to help people. I wanted to serve my community that I live in. I do wish the patrol changed things a little bit. When I first came on, I was assigned to Dorchester County, which was, that was the only area you worked. So you knew everybody in the community. You knew those little shops. You knew people at the bank. You knew because you stopped out and got out everywhere. But now they went to a troop concept several years ago, which is you might work an accident in Dorchester County and then go all the way to Colleton County or in Cottageville and work a wreck. So you're spread out really thin. So I like that county concept where you knew everybody. If there was a certain crime that occurred, I know who I can talk to try to find out if I can solve this thing.
So it's obvious with you when we talk about community policing, you really believe in that and think that's a key for both the officers and the community as well.
There has to be trust between the officer and the community. People would stop me. Sometimes it would take for me to buy a guy a hot dog at the little country store, and he would tell me what's going on, but he knew it wouldn't get out anywhere, but he trusted me enough to tell me. No one wants their house robbed. When I was small, I was about 8 years old. Our house got robbed in Connecticut. And I felt so violated. I remember staying up many nights, just looking out the window, see what else would come in our house. I'm like, what? I don't ever want to feel like that anymore. I don't want anyone else to feel like that. Right. So that's why I dedicated my time to the patrol. And even now I'm still serving the community, not so much in the law enforcement aspect, because I can't go out and make an arrest. I can't write tickets, but I'm still telling you how to get to work. People always say, well, the road shut down for 2 hours. Well, I'm going to tell you why it shut down. I'm going to tell you how you can get around it. I'm going to tell you what the scene looks like, what charges can be paid, and what law enforcement is looking for. So I'm going to give you a lot more information than you would just hearing the roads blocked.
It is a true difference when you turn on ABC News 4 and listen to Trooper Bob with the traffic reports, both in the morning and in the afternoon. And really, anytime traffic happens, you seem to be on the scene. We are talking with Bob Beres. Bob Beres is Trooper Bob. He rose to the rank of lieutenant with the South Carolina Highway Patrol. When he left the force, he became Trooper Bob with ABC News 4, and he's joining us today on Mount Pleasant Podcast. I'm Brian Cleary, and Mount Pleasant Podcast, much like the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine, we try to introduce you to people who are making a difference in the community. So, Bob, a lot of people get their relative kind of feel of what a cop is from a TV show, maybe a movie. So is there a favorite cop that you watched on TV or have seen in the movies? Who's your go-to on screen or on the small screen cop?
Well, there was two of them, and I'm going to, you're going to laugh when I tell you this, but Ponch and John, we all grew up watching Chips.
Absolutely. Come on.
When the Highway Patrol, we got the new BMW motorcycles. So I actually tweeted, this is another story about getting on social media, but my bosses made me do it. I didn't even know what Twitter was at the time. I had to Google it. But he says, get on social media. So I got on and I actually tagged in Ponch and John, and both of them replied. And Ponch actually follows me on Twitter now.
Everyone's talking about real estate. The conversation continues with Voice for Real Estate podcast. Listen and learn from the experts who call the Carolinas home. Podcast advertising gives your business a voice of authority. Be heard. Advertise on this podcast. Visit voiceforrealestate.com.
You're listening to the Mount Pleasant Podcast.
And let's talk a little bit about social media, because you are a social media, maybe you didn't know about it now, but I would say you're an expert, king of social media. One tweet, one post that I always notice, it's 9:00. Do you know where your children are? Why that?
We get to something that's really important about that post is people ask me, why do you do it? First of all, It's not set on a timer. I will never set it on a timer. I type it out. When you see it, I've typed it out 5 minutes before that because I'm thinking about all these kids that aren't accounted for, all these parents that don't know where their children are. We used to see that on TV when I was a kid. My dad would talk to the TV. Yeah, he's in the kitchen, or he's doing. My dad would know. Even if I left the house, he knew where I was, and that's so important today for kids. Back then we didn't have the technology. You didn't have a cell phone attached to your hip. You didn't have a pager, or your parents expect you to home a certain time, and that's when you came home. But now, parents, being a trooper, I see these kids out 2:00 in the morning. I caught a 15-year-old kid drunk one time on Highway 61. Parents need to know that you're responsible for your child till they're 18 years old, at least. So you need to know where they are. So that's why I do it. I want parents to stop what they're doing for that second and say, you know what, let me check on them. And people reply.
And I think the best part about your social media feeds that you have, and if people aren't following you, they should be. One, you're going to see traffic things and see serious things. But then I'm going to also see that photo of what your mom's cooking and the special Hungarian dish. So it's a great balance of fun stuff and serious stuff.
When my boss says, look, we need you to get on social media, again, I didn't know what it was. I had to Google it and all that stuff. I just had a little Facebook page, my little personal page, but now I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. But it's a way to people that can connect with you. But I told my boss, there's two things I'm going to ask you if I can get on social media. Number one, I just want to be Trooper Bob. I don't care about rank. In the patrol, yes, I care about it. But people that need help or want information from you, they don't care about what rank you are. They just want you to know, can you help me? So I just want to be Trooper Bob, be on everybody's level. And then Trooper is a basic trooper right out of the academy. That's what I wanted to be, regardless of where I went in rank. So he allowed me to do that. And the second thing I said, I want to reply to people like I'm talking to you right now, Brian. I don't want a government canned message. I don't want, a certain way it's supposed to be scripted. No. If you tell me, hey, Bob, what do you think about my cooking? Or I was like, man, that's off the chain. That's good. I like it. So that's the way I want to talk to you. And he agreed. And that's how it all started.
And it really is amazing the followers you have, some of the posts that come up, and really, and before we wrap up here, we want to make certain everybody knows how to follow you on social media. But you're on TV now, an Emmy Award winner. Congratulations on that. So let's talk Mount Pleasant traffic. Tell me something that people should know in terms of traffic, and what do you see the biggest challenge right now in terms of Mount Pleasant and traffic?
Well, right now is really not a challenge because school's out, but wait till school comes in a couple of weeks. School zones. Know that you have to slow down in these school zones, pedestrian crosswalks. Everyone wants their kids to go to school, but nobody wants to wait behind the bus. When these buses are out, it's important to know when you can stop, when you don't need to stop for a school bus. Leave extra early. There's more than 4 million registered drivers in South Carolina now. Mm-hmm. And from what I read in the Post and Courier, like 50 people move to our state every day. So traffic is a lot more now than it was a year ago. Allow extra time, know where you're going to your destination. If there's something doesn't go wrong, that's why I asked you to follow me, because I'll help you navigate around these other areas where people are just focused on, I only know Highway 17. I don't know Rifle Range Road. I don't know. Those are the roads that'll help you get around these wrecks.
And I can say, because I do follow Trooper Bob, that information is always there for you. And it's great. We're talking with Trooper Bob. Bob Beres is your traffic man on ABC News 4. He's a traffic safety expert and a former lieutenant in the South Carolina Highway Patrol. I'm Brian Cleary. Thanking you for joining us here on the Mount Pleasant podcast. So in terms of, I have to say, you've got the coolest vehicle that I've ever seen. Talk, and if you can describe it to folks, the ABC News 4 Trooper Bob car is pretty amazing.
Right. It's a traffic tracker. It's a really cool car. It kind of looks like a Google car. It has there's a camera system that's 8'5" off the top of the vehicle. That's how high it stands, 8'5". I know because if I go through a drive-through, I need to make sure I know that height limit. So it has 8 high-definition cameras in the car, 4 on top. It has a 360-degree view, and people always ask, why is the camera system way up there? Well, if I'm on the interstate and I'm driving westbound, there's a crash on the eastbound side, I can look over that concrete wall and show you the traffic ahead. I can show you the wreck scene and all the traffic that's behind me and tell you either take another route or tack on an extra 20 minutes coming through there. And also, if I am stuck in traffic, which I try not to do, I can look over a pickup truck or a larger vehicle in front of me and still do your traffic reports and show you what's going on around me.
Now, when you've been pulling into Bojangles, because you always deliver lunch to first responders from Bojangles, any problems with the cameras and the height and on the drive-through, you're good?
No, there's no problems there. It's actually like 8'7" there through the Bojangles. But I actually go inside because we have such a big lunch for the first responders. I love doing it. I'm gonna be out there tomorrow to surprise the first responders unit, and this is our 4th year doing it. So it's humbling, and I'm so thankful and honored that Bojangles partnered with us to support our first responders, because they do have a dangerous job. Every time they put their uniform on, they don't know what call they're going to get. They don't know what's going to go on in the next 5 minutes or if they're going to make it home that night. So it's important that we support them.
And I see from time to time that you'll have a celebrity of sorts, someone going on a ride along with you. That's got to be pretty interesting. Tell me some of the folks that you've had doing ride alongs with Trooper Bob. We've
had singers in there. I've had people from the Dave Ramsey show in there. Mayor Haney was in there just the other day. We were talking about the beach traffic and Know Before You Go. And I like ordinary folks. To me, everyone's a VIP. Obviously, COVID had a lot to do with it, so we had to actually stop it because of COVID. So we're starting it back up now. So we'll get some regular folks in there. If you have a problem with your plumbing, I want to get a plumber in there and talk about what you can do and construction, maybe an attorney in there. So we have everyday folks along with some high-profile people that sit in the traffic tracker.
And let's change the subject up a little bit about food, because I know it's an important part of your life. Have you ever met Guy Fieri?
I want to meet Guy Fieri. I've met presidents, I've met athletes, world leaders. I really want to meet Guy. I text him, not text him, but I tweet him every now and then, because I watch Diner Drivers Dives on Friday night. So I'll do a tweet and I'll say, "Hey, Guy, all 5 lanes or all 6 lanes are open to Flavortown. There's no delays." And he'll tweet back, "Thanks, Trooper Bob." So I've never met him, but he always likes my posts. And so hopefully next time he's in Charleston, that maybe I'll get to park the traffic tracker next to him and maybe get a little interview with him.
Now, you're well-traveled. So when you're going across the country, have you gone to some of those places that are on his show? And are there places that you can point to and go, "Hey, if you're going to be in Montana, go to Trooper Bob says go to where?"
So he's trying to see the restaurants that he's been to. So it's kind of like asking you, where can I go in Charleston? So, he's showcased them on the TV. There's video that you can see of what you like. So, ahead of time what you could order. I'm actually going to Hungary here in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to visit family. I'm going to tour Hungary for 2 weeks. So I'm looking for some old school Hungarian cooking that's actually done outside over a cast iron kettle.
So for somebody watching who's not familiar, because there's not a lot of Hungarian restaurants here in Charleston, we got a lot of Mexican, a lot of variety. So what's the basis? Give me some thoughts in terms of Hungarian food and what people should gravitate towards.
There is a Hungarian restaurant in Hilton Head. It's called Taste of Europe. If you walk inside, you think you're sitting in Budapest. I mean, the music, everything on the wall, the food. There are actually 2 trained chefs from Budapest that run that restaurant. Basic Hungarian dishes, Hungarian goulash. Everyone's heard of it. It's a beef soup. Some people look at it as stew. Chicken paprikash, it's chicken dumplings with homemade dumplings like Spätzle for the German side of it. It's cooked over boiling water. There's stuffed cabbage, stuffed peppers, things like that. That's the stuff I grew up on.
Now, when I'm following you on social media, I'll see your plate photo sometimes. Sometimes your mom prepares it. Sometimes you do. Where do you rate yourself in terms of your cooking and your culinary abilities?
Brian, if I don't cook, I don't eat. So one thing about social media is I can show a car wreck with 3 cars flipped over and, maybe 250 people will like it. I'll show something I cooked that I wanted to put together and plate really nicely. It's just a basic dish and I'll have, 700 people like it. So I think sometimes people are just, they're curious. They want to know what you're doing on your off time and where you're going. So I try to post stuff about my food or where I'm going or where I've been to share those experiences with our viewers and followers.
We are talking with Trooper Bob Beres, former lieutenant with the South Carolina Highway Patrol, our guest today on the Mount Pleasant podcast. Along with Mount Pleasant Magazine, we try to introduce you to people who are making a difference here in Mount Pleasant in our community. He, of course, the traffic tracker on ABC News4. So, Bob, if somebody wants to follow you on social media, why don't you share your handles so people can start liking and following?
Absolutely, Brian. At @TrooperBob_SC. At @TrooperBob_SC. You can catch me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. and I'll follow you back. And hopefully, I can help you out with your morning commute there, especially when school starts in a couple of weeks, where it always catches people off guard. I didn't know, I forgot school started, but right now it's like easy peasy until we get that more, that school traffic.
So you're going to Hungary shortly. Will you be back in time for school, or is that more of you'll be back after Labor Day? When we'll have a little period without you?
I'll be here before school starts to help out with that school traffic. And I'm also going to Vermont, so I'll share that with you. And I'm also going to Florida in the next 30 days. So got a lot of travel to do, and looking forward to it and sharing the experiences with you guys.
Bob, you and I have known each other for a while, back when your South Carolina Highway Patrol days, and you talked about giving back to the community. If you don't mind, talk about that a little, because you've given a lot to the Navy, you've given a lot as a police officer, and now you just seem to be a community guy, and it really comes through. Where does that come from?
Number one, it comes from the heart. My dad was always a giving guy and helped everybody. And if he had $10 in his pocket, he gave away $11 that day. He always helped. And my dad, I was never just roaming the streets growing up. My dad always kept me with him, whether he worked for a construction company. So over the summer, I'd always drive with him. I was always with my dad, because if he needed help, that canceled out any activity plans I had with my friends. So if my dad needs help, I'm going to help him. One thing that comes to mind, I received the 2007 Trooper of the Year award for South Carolina, but I got it 10 years after I did what I did, until somebody found out about it. I went to Lowe's to work for 4 years. I saved up for a boat. I went fishing out in the Charleston Harbor in this place called Dynamite Hole, and I would catch all the little whiting. And when I was coming home one day, a little old lady at the end of my street, she lived in a trailer, and her daughter lived in a second trailer next to her, and they had an extension cord going from one trailer to the house. So I've always, when I was a trooper, I always see her fishing on Highway 78 near the water wheel with her grandkids with a cane pole and, 3 feet of water. So I was like, I'm going to give this lady the fish. So I stopped and honked my horn. She came out. I introduced myself. So she took the fish. So it was like music. Every time it would flowed perfectly. When I would come home from any time I fished, I'd hit the horn a couple of times. She already knew she was coming out with a pan. Came back from Connecticut, her house burnt down. She's standing on the steps. I've got a picture of her standing on the steps of her burnt down house that her husband built. It had a dirt floor in it. That'll set the picture there. And I said, Miss Minnie, I said, what do you need? What can I help you with? She said, Bob, I don't need anything. God will help me. I'm like, here's a lady that's in her 70s, has nothing to her name. And she says, the man upstairs will help her. I said, I've got to do something. Within an hour, I put my boat in the paper. I sold the boat. I gave all the cash to Miss Minnie. The community rallied together. We were able to get her a trailer donated from a construction company, electrical company hooked up the power, plumbing company. Lowe's gave her all kinds of stuff, refrigerator. She had clothes from Belk's. Everybody came in together. And that's what it's about. I could always get a boat. I was looking at myself. I was, 30 something years old. I said, I'll probably have 3 or 4 boats by this time, but we need to help out the elderly people in our community. I want to share one quick story with you, Brian. My dad said when he grew up in Hungary that if he was walking down the road and an elderly neighbor came out and said, hey, here's some money. Can you please go get me something from the grocery store? Because, I'm not able to walk down there. My dad went and got it and came back and gave him the change. So we need to help out these, the elderly folks that took care of themselves and their family, and they're part of our community too.
And it may sound cliche, Bob, but I think you would agree it's not the reason to do it, but boy, giving feels good.
Absolutely does. And I try to do it every day. If I always said, if I ever won the lottery, I do what I can now, but if I ever won the lottery, I would spend the rest of my life driving around and doing random acts of kindness, and people would know about it.
Don't do it to call attention to yourself. And you're a guy who gets a lot of attention, although you get up pretty early in the morning. What time does that alarm go off for you to get on the roads?
I'm used to it. I was in the Navy. I was on a patrol. I always got up early. This is just a little bit earlier, but 3:30, my alarm clock goes off. 4 o'clock, we hold a meeting on our team's meeting with our morning crew. And then I'm in the vehicle and I'm looking at dispatch logs and seeing what's going on. If there's a breaking story, such as if there's a fire or shooting, a bad accident I need to go to, and I'm on air from 5 to 7. And then I do 2 cut-ins at 7:30 and 8:30 during Good Morning America. And then I do something in the community. Sometimes it's somebody complaining about a pothole on the street that they can't get fixed. So I'll go out there and get it fixed for them. Or I'll stop by a blood drive, encourage people to come out there, whatever the station needs me to do.
He's an Emmy Award winner and our guest today on Mount Pleasant Podcast, and he's just a good man to know. Trooper Bob Beres, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Really appreciate it and love the stories.
Brian, thank you for your friendship over the years, and look forward to more interviews with you. Thank you.
And when we go back on social media, everybody remember Guy Fieri. Put some pressure on Guy Fieri. We want to get him back here. Bob needs to meet him. It's something that it's the least we can do for you, Bob. You do so much for us.
Oh, it'd be an honor to meet Guy, just like it was when I met you, Brian.
Thank you. Mount Pleasant Podcast, we're a service of the Mount Pleasant Magazine, and our goal is to introduce you to people in our community that are making a difference. And Trooper Bob is one of them. Trooper Bob, our guest today, it's the Mount Pleasant Podcast. Thank you so much for watching and listening.
Thanks for spending your time with the Mount Pleasant Podcast, your community, your podcast. Listen to past and future episodes at mountpleasantpodcast.com.